Do you like conversation on a variety of topics? Feel like no one wants to talk about the things that interest you? Tired of only hearing the same political, sports, or catastrophe talk? Yeah, we feel that way too. Join two high-functioning geeks as they discuss just about anything under the sun. We can't tell you what we'll be talking about each week because we don't know where our brains will take us. It will be an interesting conversation though, so hang on and join us. Here comes the Relentless Geekery.
Brought to you by Mind Architecture. Building worlds for your mind.
I can hear you.
So we're going to try something new. You still got a Christmas sweatshirt. We're going to record.
This is a new one. I got the new
Oh,
Thor
that's
Christmas tree.
pretty awesome.
Yes.
I'm going to try recording in the cloud to see if we don't get that stutter at times.
Okay, very good.
See what happens.
In fact, that could be like the launch for today. You and I tend to both get value out of our technology, but what I've been noticing lately is it just shouldn't be this hard. I have certain things that, like my backup hard drive, just started to throw errors, and it is as important as, oh no, I can't get to my music on my media hard drive, but I don't want to not have a backup. And when you start investigating, it's, wow, I used to get an 8 terabyte drive for this amount of money, and now I just found like a 14 terabyte drive for the same amount of money. And technology always marches on, and that's one of those wonderful fields where you keep on getting better and at a lesser price. So it's just kind of a thing to let yourself in every way stay stagnant, because I don't want to spend, like a hard drive is about maybe 110, 120 bucks. That seems like a very small expenditure per year to make sure you have state of the art and more room and all that kind of stuff. So that whatever post-Christmas funds I have, a little bit will be, hey, should I have like Wi-Fi 6 everywhere? You know what I mean? And if anything, I like that idea of, I want to keep my hand in on some of these things. And unless you work with current technology, you fall behind. I think, for instance, that my CD, DVD, reader, writer, all the kind of stuff, that I got the Ultimate Guy from a couple of years ago, and I don't think that's a technology that's advancing very quickly. But communications always does. Router, Wi-Fi and stuff.
Yeah, the CDs and writers and stuff, you like specifically have to search those out. They're dying breed. People just aren't, using them.
And that's true. In fact, I just saw it. One of the things that happens online is someone will put out a meme that says, someone just told me about ripping and like making your own CD, and how would you do that? Who in the world would do that? Isn't everything just in the cloud? And pardon me, there's a certain amount of, I don't know, I don't rip that many CDs. It's not like people used to make tapes for their girlfriends, you know what I mean, a mixtape and stuff like that, or for their guy friends and all that kind of stuff. So it's more, that's still when I get, one of the cool things that's been happening, we've talked about this for 3 years of our show running, there's wonderful collections being put together of a whole life's work for Christmas. And it's funny, all of our topics are bleeding together. Colleen got me the Keith Emerson box.
Good.
Set.
Yeah, you said you were hoping.
Like 20 CDs. It's everything that he didn't do in ELP, plus some stuff from there. But it's very cool that these places, Burning Shed, Rhino, there's a number of places that specialize in this, where they collect all the different albums, get the permissions from the various, because they're not always issued by the same company. Not everybody dealt with EMI or Columbia and that kind of stuff. And but then there's all the cool extra stuff of interviews with people that knew them, and rarities where it was like, hey, they captured a live broadcast from the Christmas concert or whatever else it might be. And how do I get that into my computer? It's 20 CDs. It really might be that it's out there all also digitized for me, but I like reading the libretto. I like having the CDs and the pictures and that kind of stuff. So I don't mind that delivery mechanism. It's actually very handy. Like this, I don't want to dig it out of the stack. It's as big as a cigar box, but it's the guy's life's work. It's a wonderful surprise. She didn't just get me Keith Emerson, she also got me Greg Lake's, which is called Miracle, if I remember right. And oh no, that's only 8 CDs, because he wasn't quite as prolific. And the reason for saying all that is, I really want it to be that I got the drive that it's not going to choke on anything. I don't want to get error correction is not good enough, that it doesn't get the fastest sampling rate and stuff like that. So it's worth seeking that kind of thing out for at least my purposes, which is I still usually buy CDs and digest them into my computer, burning things, but and burning and ripping. That's technology perhaps that's fading away.
Well, burning definitely, because just got not a brand new car, but a couple year old car. No CD player, not even an option. It's Bluetooth and that's it. So, but I still like buying the physical media rather than buying it off iTunes, because iTunes then controls it, and I'm still having to download it and transfer it if I want to listen to it here, there, or anywhere. Because great, I bought it on iTunes, but I have an Alexa. I want to, so
That's right.
I still prefer, if I buy the CD, I own the CD. If my files get messed up, I can re-rip it. If I go to someplace, and I put the CDs away because it's become inconvenient to try and have a case of CDs and switch them. I just put all my stuff on my Alexa and I'm good to go.
I hear you. I agree with all that stuff. And you and I have talked about this before. I just had an example. I tried to listen to Meatloaf's "Bet Out of Hell" album the other day, and half the cuts are missing. Somehow
Right.
There's property dispute going on. It's like Cleveland Records, and I don't want to know who put something out. It's never mattered to me. I don't follow a label. I follow the artist. I follow so the fact that I've got this piece of Swiss cheese that I have to re-rip if I'm going to hear all the cuts, and then stop iTunes or Spotify, whoever else, from messing with me. It weirds me out. That kind of stuff can just go away, even though I showed ownership by having digested it in the first place. So that might be a big project for this year, is stop using Apple Music or iTunes. Like, then there's a big difference now. Apple Music is the online service, and it really has 3 million things and stuff like that. But I don't want it to be that I'm still getting everything from them off the cloud and pay a subscription fee. My collection is so extensive that it is all of what I want, and I've already paid for it. I don't want to pay another access fee every month to get my own stuff. So I'm going to work on that. And this is funny, I think we talked about this a little bit before. I have, without realizing it, sometimes had multiple collections. I got all my dad's CDs from California, and I did rip them into a separate catalog so that I'd be able to share it with my brothers, but not my entire collection. Not because I don't want to share it, but I wanted to have this specific thing.
Right.
If you don't keep track of exactly what catalog you're in, you start adding your other new CDs, and now they're mixed in with Comedy World, and they're mixed in with Dad World, and those kinds of things. So I've been consolidating that, and in most cases, it's as easy as bringing up 2 windows on the Finder, the Mac file system, and copying things over. But then you have to say, okay, if I have a more recent version, is that the one where it's got a better sampling rate? But it is also one where it's already been, like, some of the cuts are missing. I don't think they actually they don't delete the cuts from your drive, but the meta information says it looks at the directory first, not the physical things. So I'm doing this whole exercise of, okay, I think I got it now as to where I should copy things over and then have it redo the catalog, redo the directory for me. And even then, I'm still like, but it's a lot of work if you have a lot of CDs. And I've started where, like, I get down through K for the day, and then it's okay, now I got new stuff, but I got to make sure, do I know where I'm adding it to? Because I don't want to put it into the wrong place and then still have to copy it back. And Emerson, like, Keith Emerson would be in the K's, but Greg is in the G's. And so I'd have to go back and say, oh, I hope I didn't miss anything else. And I just want to be like, get it done and be done and have one true.
Right. And an argument of why I still like to buy physical. So there was a series of Christmas albums called A Very Special Christmas. And it was all the artists did it for free, and all the money, well, supposedly, all went to the Special Olympics. Okay. And I loved the albums and I loved the artists. I got the cassette of the very first one. And then years later, I upgraded and bought the CD. So I bought it twice. Yeah. But I listened to it and I'm like, this isn't right. Here there was some sort of dispute. So when they did the CD, they got rid of one song by Bon Jovi, put a different song by Bon Jovi on there.
So and the track listing is different.
Exactly. Yeah. And then Chrissie Hynde had a song. And for whatever, before it was just this little kid, like, Merry Christmas, bing bong, as he's running around the house. And it was just this real little 5-second clip. But to me, it was part of the song. And they took that off on the CD. And I was like, oh, no, not having that. So I went back to my cassette, ripped those 2 things off, put it onto my ripped. So I have the deluxe version with everything.
All the cuts.
Right. And then Def Leppard also, a couple years ago, they were in a dispute with the online streaming because they didn't own the rights to their songs. And the company said, no, we're not putting them on streaming. And they're like, so what they did, they re-recorded some of their biggest hits and put those on streaming. Those are completely different versions of the stuff. And things don't always sound quite the same and right. And there's certain intonations and inflections, and a certain point, you just hear a click from somebody hitting the guitar. That's all part of the whole thing. So I got those, but good thing I still had the CDs to get all the original way it sounded. They remaster some of this stuff and adjust things. And Layla is another great example, but it's an example in the good one. So the original Layla album, Keys to the Highway song, a wonderful tune on that album. And when they did the 25th anniversary box set, they went back to the master recordings to remix it and make it sound better. They found a part, was it Greg Allman maybe, that when they were playing, he just went, woo, as they're playing. They cut that out. And they listened to it and said, that sounds really good, and put it back in on the box set. So there's an example of improving it rather than making it worse.
Yeah. As you know, that's one of the topics I suggested. I don't know. I love music, but I don't study. It's not like I'm sitting there trying to memorize a song. But when you have a brain that does tend to remember everything, you really notice those little things where there's a little movement on a fret, or there's a great an ELP live album, the Welcome Back My Friends album. There's one where you can hear a guy in the crowd going, "You're driving me crazy," or something like that. And then when you hear it with, "That's not right," and you don't realize how much you miss it until it's like you anticipate it, and then that cool proof of audience interaction is missing. So
Whitesnake did that. They re-recorded Here I Go Again, like in 2000, 2002, whatever. It was like 20 years different. So their voices changed, whatever. They re-recorded it. And I was listening to it one day on the radio, and I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't the right song. And the guy, yeah, this is Whitesnake from 1986 and blah, blah, blah. And the station got all these calls like, that's not the 86 version. That's the new recorded one.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's really true. When you hear, obviously, everybody's vocals change over the course of time. Their vocal cords not lengthen, right? They shorten. And so they can't hit they don't have the whole range, if you will.
Right.
And if you're used to a certain, I don't know, David Coverdale has a very distinctive voice. So does Burton Cummings. So does Greg Lake. And then when you hear it off, that it's the older strained version, Ian Anderson is another one, you're like, oh, I don't want to get used to the new one. I want to go back to the old one. You know what I mean?
Right.
They re-recorded it for all the right reasons, like you were saying, to reclaim their songs. And Taylor Swift is now famous for that she got into the same mind that so many young artists do, that somebody else owned all their stuff because they signed contracts before they knew what the game was all about. And then when they re-record those things, she still did it within a couple of years. So it sure still, so far as I know, sounds like her. But if someone re-records things 30 years later, oh, it's a whole different band. It's a whole different guy.
Right.
That the gal that's singing it.
And then there was like Ray Stevens. A lot of his early catalog either was destroyed or they refused to release it or something. So he went back and had to record whole albums, but it was like 30, 35 years later. And just, it did not sound the same. He was a comedian singer, and it was, yeah, he's saying the same jokes, but I don't feel it. It's just like a robotic.
That's right. There's not the young impudence. There's not the yelling of doing it for the first time. I mean, especially comedy music. That's part of it, is the surprise. The first version of it is the freshest. And I don't think he necessarily sounded terrible, like world weary about it. But I know I've heard things like where someone just sounds too husky. No, I want it's like Sting. When you hear him do Police material, it isn't the young, snotty asshole version of himself. It's the mature, I've been through a lot of stuff. And you know what I mean? There sure is a different, not only in the sound of his voice, but in his whole attitude, in his maturity as a human being. So I don't know. I like having both of those things. I like the contrast. Like oftentimes I'll go on a binge where I'm going to listen to Kansas from A to Z, and you'll hear all the youth of it, and Steve Walsh's voice changes slightly also. And even, you know how some people, they get tired of doing their own material again and again, so they start to vamp it up a little bit. They change the phrasing and stuff like that. And I don't mind it. It sounds more live when it's slightly different. But there's also some things like, Steve, just stay on the note. You don't have to go sliding around all the time. You really could just give the song that everybody wants to hear. You know?
Green Day's a little bit of, not really hot water, but brought attention to themselves for changing some lyrics during a live show.
Interesting. That's right. So I actually like that too. I've gotten used to, like, you'll hear the name of the city that they're in. Huey
Right.
Lewis would say
Yes.
the city name whenever he did Chicago, that kind of stuff. But what was Green Day's? It remind us of the example that it's very political, obviously.
Oh,
So
yes. Well, Green Day's a punk band, essentially, anti-establishment attitudes the whole time, right? And their one song, American Idiot. Now, just take the title, folks, American Idiot. Of course, Weird Al did a great parody called Canadian Idiot, which is very funny.
Okay.
But so Green Day had a line in there talking about the redneck agenda. And this was from 91 or so 30
Okay.
years ago. And recently, was it the Super Bowl or not the Super, some playoff or something? New Year's Day, whatever. They were playing and they changed redneck agenda to MAGA agenda. And people lost their minds. Whoa, I can't believe they gotten political and I'm not listening to them anymore. And have you people ever listened to them?
Exactly.
This is them exactly. And the best comment was, isn't it cute how all these people are suddenly realizing that this derogatory song is about them?
I love that. I love the fact that they were bold enough to do that. You know what I mean? And it really is. I don't know. I've been talking about the NASCARization of the United States for 30 years at least. You know what I mean? That there's just something that crept up that was, wow, that's more ignorance and bigotry and slow thought than I'm used to. And why would we adopt that? Why would we say, maybe for once the good money will drive out the bad instead of the other way around? No, always we regress towards the lowest common denominator. So, hey, southern half of the United States, sorry that if you think that my saying the NASCARization is an insult, yeah, it is. I don't get much out of, I don't know, cultures that separate ignorance and bigotry, and we could do all the labeling. It's just listen to, I don't like, wow, every time I hear a Christmas song that also includes military themes, or it weirds me out to be like, even this most wonderful time of the year, you couldn't get past your guns and your drinking and it's not a novelty song like Grandma got run over by a reindeer. This really is Christmas to you. Have the kids get their guns and get into the Christmas picture. Ugh.
Yeah, we've had representatives doing that, House of Representatives and stuff. I've seen some pictures. It goes back to this. American Idiot is like the version of anarchy in the UK. It's the same type of thing.
Yeah, I will. By the way, I think that you might even have seen this and commented on it. Somebody just put up a little thing of Mozart, and his time was like brash. He was so talented that he could get away with not only making his own beautiful music, but making fun of others. And they show that in Amadeus, where he's working on a Salieri piece and he's like improving it in real time, and Salieri is wincing and stuff like that. But then they said, it isn't that we only have the Mozarts and the Beethovens from the past. There's got to be, in a world of 7 billion people, that are similarly talented and influential in that way. And so they went through, what was it about Mozart that made him so great? He drank in all the music around him and would do new variations on it and all these things. And they said, you know who our new modern Mozart is? It's Weird Al. That Weird Al Yankovic has this ability to work in every form of music and in such a talented, loving but teasing way, and that I don't know, I just thought that was such a wonderful benediction to how amazingly talented he really is. Him and his band being able to play all the different kinds of music in order to do a spot-on parody is good, not because it sounds like it. It's because it's so close that you could mistake it for it until you listen to the lyrics and going, wait, that's not the way that, what is it, Amish Paradise? You know what I mean? That's not the way Gangsta Paradise goes, that kind of thing. So hats off to Weird Al for having such a body of work. I know when I get stupid money, when I get me that it really doesn't matter what I had to pay for things, seek out that accordion box set. I missed it when it came out. I really want to have proudly on my shelf the accordion and have anybody who sees it will go, Weird Al fan. They'll know that I'm a fan. You know what I mean?
I used to actually have an accordion, and unfortunately my ex-wife got rid of it. I wish I still had it because I would pay to have Weird Al sign it.
Exactly. Yeah. As Colleen likes to call it, the stomach Steinway. Let's see, don't we hop around too much? So no. I love that the whole idea of remixing and people being able to, like, I don't know, I don't have that talent. I think that I can hear, well, there's of course a difference in how they track it. If you got a 48-track mixer, you really are going to have vocals and all the various different instrumentation on various different things. But to be able to pick that out and say, if we bring up we need more wood block, exactly that. I'm gonna so it's cool that the Stephen Wilsons of the world have that ability to look at the orchestration and the mixing of it. And that's a whole different way of looking at music, is the component parts, and put it back together and emphasize and de-emphasize and whatever else it might be. So I mentioned Steven Wilson because he's renowned, at least in the prog world, for looking at old music that people have really come to know deeply, like from King Crimson albums, Yes albums, Gentle Giant. I'm trying to think exactly what he's worked on. And I must admit that a lot of times when I hear the new version, it's like, it sounds brighter, like whatever they did to get rid of musical mud and bring out things that just sounds crisper. I get that, but I don't really notice many differences. And so I guess that's why I'm a CD level listener instead of a tube amp listener, because I don't need the full dynamic range, and I don't need everything in the right place in the room, or it doesn't sound right on a Steely Dan album or something where they were known for really paying attention to that. You know what I mean? I guess I don't have those ears. I really love music, and yet no wonder I didn't pursue a career in that, because I couldn't be the guy at the soundboard making sure that it sounded just perfect for the band. You know, and
if you play the instrument, you don't care. You let the soundboard guy do his job.
The technology of it. You were a working musician for a number of years.
Yeah.
Did you look into the technology of it and the mixing of it?
For school, yes, we had to take electronic music, which is not the same electronic music as you have today.
Isn't that funny? Yeah.
I had to make a drum. We had to make a loop and remix something using a loop. And I took When the Levee Breaks,
Exactly.
and I cut that and made it a loop. When I say make it a loop, it was reel-to-reel tape. I had to record it and find it and cut it and splice it. And my loop was so long, it ran around the whole room with music stands and stuff. And then we had to mix in other stuff on top of it and layer it to create something new. And so I got into it a little bit, not so much I did some recordings, know the soundboards and stuff like that, but I was always the musician. I'm playing, you make it sound good out there and I'll trust you on it.
I hear you. So I think we talked about this way back in college. Synthesizers were just coming into play. At Plato, we really had some of the first music synthesizers, and so a friend of mine, Tom Cortese, worked at CIRO, the Computer Education Resource Lab, in the music area, and so he really knew a ton of that technology. And I learned a little bit about it in my own studio, but everything I had was very analog. It was reel-to-reel tape. And so as I got out and got out of school and started to build a home studio, because I really had something inside of me that wanted to create music, I learned about MIDI and how to do that level. But absolutely, that's a field where I'm doing this in '83. So here we are 40 years later, virtually nothing. I'd be the guy they'd bring in to say, hey, give us that old time feel, because you're the one that actually had to work in this field. But I so much don't know how we do things nowadays. Auto-tune is like an amazing thing, but that wasn't available in my day, nor was even just the ease of mixing and synchronizing. You know what I mean? They have things that really do bring things so it's in perfect, as if someone was rock steady beating, whereas human beings don't do that. I'm very curious about getting back into that, because I've always liked that, the understanding the sonics of things, but it sure is. Even now, if I start learning, give it 5 years and they're going to be like, well, a third of what I've learned now is obsolete, because that field moves along so quickly. What
you should just do is get GarageBand on your iPad, because GarageBand is phenomenal in what it can do just from the iPad. And you can easily put down chords and stuff, and then you can adjust it so it's on the beat if you're off. And you don't even have to do it on the beat. You just hit the notes you need, and it makes loops and all sorts of stuff. So GarageBand is definitely.
I did work with primitive sequencers and synthesizers back then. I don't know if we talked about this a lot. I was so enamored of people that were doing experiments like the Brian Enos of the world, that they had, and Genesis, they had found sounds. It wasn't just pick up an instrument and play it. They would find sounds, put it through a tape loop, and then have it be, I did a lot of things with keyboards where I'd have the sound of a burning fire, a crackling fire, and then the keyboard was what would play that sound, if you will. So you could do, and some of it was musical mud, like I mentioned earlier, but some of it was like, I went out to this stadium and you could hit the stadium seats, all metal, and go and get all these cool white noise and Doppler effect type things.
Right.
I captured all kinds of cool stuff like that. And I had all kinds of people that listened to my stuff say, you obviously don't know music theory because none of this really makes sense, but it sounds great. It sounds very interesting. And I didn't get a chance. Part of the reason that I started to do things after I got out of school was how much could I recreate at home, and nowhere like in the music lab studio, you had all kinds of stuff that the university provided. And
Yeah.
I couldn't get all that, but things were just starting to be that you could get, I don't know, a little Casio keyboard and recreate a whole bunch of stuff from MIDI tables and instrumentation that I got 200 different instruments in here. You know what I mean? I'm going to try to learn how to play things that sound like an oboe on a keyboard or whatever else it might be. So, and because I was never a great musician, everything was very painstaking. And it'd be one of those things where I had to say, okay, I need a 4-hour block of time because this isn't something I can just like goof off with for 20 minutes. I got to pour myself back into it, get what I'm trying to do, experiment a lot, and then see if I can play it enough so that I want to try to do Hoedown from Emerson, Lake and Palmer. If you don't really know how to play, that's a very painstaking process because there's a lot of notes going on. But certain things I got to where I could almost duplicate them. But then I don't know, I had certain things in finger memory that have now faded. And I thought it would be an interesting sight. Have you ever seen one of these guys? They're like a human jukebox. They really can play every single one of 10,000 songs on guitar. They have the melody and whatever. And I wanted to get that. I got a big memory. I should be able, if I train myself more and more, I'll get it. I'll retain these. And then I'll also be able to say, I know that if I'm going to try something in the vein of Harry Nilsson, he always, not always, he often sounded like this. Who are the guys that used more sad keys? Who are the guys that had just certain little musical frillips that you could tell from just their DNA, who they were, came out in their music? And so another thing about Weird Al is he really has that ability to do it. And instead, also, I just got an album. I got a couple. I love getting Christmas music before Christmas and experimenting. And I got one called like the December People, which you know has got to be a prog band because, oh, isn't that haughty-toity? But it was Billy Sherwood. There's a couple of people that really are good at this. Robert Berry, Billy Sherwood, they call in all their friends. So it's the big players. It's the Steve Howes of the world. And they did a whole bunch of Christmas carols, but with all these other little bits mixed in of, that's a Gentle Giant riff. Oh, that sounds a little bit like the lead into Close to the Edge. How cool is this? That they're that talented that they can have all those snippets and bits and influences and play it just enough to not plagiarize it, but to evoke it, to say for all the people that know those beautiful musics, this sounds like them. I always wanted to be like that I could say, let me give you a little Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and then just do something Great Gates of Kiev, that kind of stuff.
Oh. See, I think you were moving in the wrong direction. You wanted to play because you loved that what they did in their music. You wanted to express that. But with all those sound stuff, you should have went in another direction and just created your own music and sound with the effects and everything you did. And it wouldn't sound like any of that, but it would have something all unique, your own. That's the direction you should have gone in.
You're probably right. One of the things that I've always admired is that people aren't the players, but they're the tool makers. They're the ones that put together those musical libraries of various different cool sounds and samples and clips and stuff like that. And I used to love, like when I was coding, I used to love buying libraries of various different things. Like here's the perfect, someone's going to enter what they think is a date and it's going to clean it up for you. It's going to make sure that it's either American style or European style and that it's 2, 2, and 4 or vice versa. And I don't want to have to write that routine everywhere I go. Someone figured out perfectly how to do centigrade to Fahrenheit translation, how to do, and it's funny, there's some simple ones that really well, I can write that. But when you start doing parsing, cleaning up input from people, and you really try to make it like the United States, for instance, has, where any address, it'll turn it into standard format. It changes all the streets so that's the appropriate abbreviation. So it's ST for street or AV for avenue or whatever else it might be. And I did a lot of that with Pete Mark where we were doing data cleansing. And I really kept thinking, this is something like everyone needs this. If I put together the library of how to do this, I could leverage this into being 10,000 sales of how to clean up your data. Sorry, I'm fighting.
Bless you.
One of the unjoys of going out for New Year's Eve and various different things is I was on jury duty 2 days this week. Boy, were people coughing and snotty and they don't do the Dracula thing where they chain it. It's like they cough into their hands and then they touch the water fountain. And so who knows what cooties I picked up, and I'm fighting them off. I don't think I've totally acquired it, but I just hate when you can feel your body little tickle in the throat, little in the ears. Come on, body. You've seen colds before. I know that they're like one of the most persistent, terrible viruses, but I'll do some extra vitamin C and I'll get some extra sleep and hope to fight this off.
Right.
So.
Let me throw something else at you for fun. Besides GarageBand, which I love GarageBand on my iPad. That's one thing I haven't really found an equivalent anywhere in the non-Apple world. But the other thing is an app software, not app software called Band in a Box. And here's why I'm throwing that at you. So
I think I've seen this. I've not played with it. Okay.
Okay. And this is like general advice to anybody wanting to learn music. People are like, oh, I want to learn how to play like Greg Howe and just riff it off, whatever. The problem is that you immediately go to that and you start learning note for note what they did. And you're not really getting better as a musician. You're getting better at playing that one thing. The best thing, best advice, and I remember Colin was in a summer rock band experience through Woodsy's music, and this kid came in and he was like, he had spent years watching YouTube, learning the fastest guitar solos note for note, but he knew nothing about music. He didn't even know what the string notes were. He didn't know how to make chords. He couldn't play in beat. So it was a really weird experience. And then
like a savant skill level, but not like human. Wow.
Yeah, but it was all from YouTube. He wasn't really a good musician because all he could do was, if he got off, he had to start all over. He couldn't pick up. And they were doing Smells Like Teen Spirit with Nirvana. And here's the beat. And then he learned how to play a couple chords. Then he'd get to the solo and he'd go 4 times as fast and not realizing that he's off beat. So my advice is to musicians, don't worry about getting to that. I want to play all this great music from these great people. Learn your notes, learn your chords, learn your fingerings, get down where it's smooth. Because once you have that foundation and that base, you can do everything else and it becomes easier. And instead of learning one thing over months and months and months, and then that's the only thing you can do, you have a base. Learning that one thing is going to take you a couple weeks, and then you can learn 5 different things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, I mentioned Tom Cortese, a good friend from U of I. So going on, wow, 45 years ago now.
How many decades?
How many decades? But he really was amazing. He had piano lessons when he was young and could really play like the Rachmaninoff impossible pieces and stuff like that. The example that I always give, this is the guy that so we had a synthesized keyboard and he could walk around to the other side of it where everything is top to bottom reversed now and play. He just had that. He's made of music. So he's always loved doing it, but didn't make a career out of it. He was actually like very bright in computer science. So he's the guy that did the weather simulations for NASA that said, when can we launch our rockets? Because there's going to be a perfect window. So I really know a friend that's a rocket scientist.
Nice.
But the way he's kept his music going is he not only had memorized the Rachmaninoff piece, he knew music. And so he plays with country and Western bands. He plays with a vocalist and accompanies her. He goes to senior centers and does like Christmas concerts and stuff like that. And the fact that he knows so much and can improvise with anyone, because he really gets, what are they doing? Right. And I'm going to add things to it. I'm not going to overpower it. I'm not going to wait for my solo and that kind of thing. My hat's off to him too, for being like, I never did that well. And I went, like I said, from 2 to 6 in the morning, all by myself. I wasn't in a jam band. I didn't collaborate. So much of my being a better musician would have been if I did that from the start. Pick up a bass guitar, learn CEG, and learn how to be with other people in a way that you're part of this wonderful collective thing you're creating, instead of, I want to learn how to play hoedown or something ridiculous like that.
And there are definitely people that are just innately high musicianship that even with a lot of practice, I and others can't even obtain that level. But music is music. That's the thing. There's 88 keys on a keyboard, whether you're playing classical, rock, jazz, or country. There's still the same 88 keys, pretty much still the same chords. And once you learn those, some of that music becomes easier, and then you learn the styles. And you may have heard of Axis of Awesome. I don't know.
You've mentioned that before. Exactly.
Yeah. The blues, the 12-bar blues, once you know that, you hear it in so many songs, and the 1 5 6 4 progression that they do for that
Exactly.
is, oh, I listened to the top 40. I heard it 4 times, that type of thing. So,
That's right.
and that's, I'm not downgrading at all his skill, because I have a friend that has perfect pitch and he can nail and play things and all that. But it does make it easier, and I guess it loses a little of the luster when you're like, yeah, I know this, the smoke behind the mirrors.
It's funny. We talked about that. I have never wanted to get really knowledgeable about movie special effects because I didn't want to look behind the curtain at the Wizard of Oz. I like saying that looks like another planet. I wonder how they did that. Instead of knowing it's just little puppets and camera trickery and stuff like that. So
yeah, let me tell you, Christmas movies are not as much fun when you predict everything that's going to happen within 5 minutes. They're just not as much fun.
Right. We watched Love Actually. That's become one of our Christmas traditions, just because it's 8 different interweaving stories, and many of them are compelling, and it's great. There's a whole great ensemble cast and stuff like that. So it's a feel-good movie, even though it's got some tragic parts to it, because it's about people at the holidays and getting together with your family and stuff like that. And I don't know that we actively sought out. How many more did we watch? We watched Spirited. I think we mentioned that.
That was fun.
That was a fun one. I don't know that we have any that we like are slavish devotees to. I really want to see, for instance, Miracle on 34th Street again, because I couldn't tell you all of what happens in that. I remember certain scenes, and some of the classics like that, like Holiday Inn, when they break into White Christmas, I do want to see that again.
It's a Wonderful Life. One,
exactly.
That one, it's so interesting. I've seen it tons. We all know the basic story. It's been used a million times, but the story, you got a part 1, part 2, and part 3 of story. And part 1 gives you you get used to the people, and then you get the conflict, and then you get the middle part
structure, as they say.
Yeah. Okay. And then you got the end, which it resolves that conflict in some way. It's a Wonderful Life. When you really watch it, it's like the buildup, the first part is like 45 minutes or something before he wants to kill himself. That's the emotional part. It's that buildup. And then really it's 10 minutes of him seeing what the world would be like before he realizes he's wrong. And there's just about as long at the end of everything going right. Totally blows the standard structure away when people are like, it has to be this long and this much percentage of your story. And it totally doesn't follow that. And so many horror movies are like that. They don't follow that strict thing. And that's, I get on my author forums, I talk to authors, I get in meetings and stuff. They're like, I got to cut this out because blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, you don't. It's horror needs more of a build up. It's just
right. You want to build the tension. You want exactly that.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's great analysis. That some part of knowing what the rules are is so you can break the rules as appropriate. You don't
and why you would break them.
Thirds that we're going to spend the time in the resolution, and also if you want to have it come to its conclusion, and then you got to have a surprise ending tacked onto that. So I really get what you're trying to say. Like we just also watched the AFI when they first released American Film Institute, their 100 years, 100 movies, their top ones of all time. And they had snippets counting down from 100 to 1, which is what we did when we watched them. And they really were incisive as to here's why everyone knows this line, because it's exactly at the right time in the movie, and that you love these characters and you're hanging on every word they're saying and that kind of stuff. And the great surprises, we rewatched every single one, and we realized we have to go back and rewatch about a dozen of them because they didn't stick. I know that we watched Grapes of Wrath, and I could tell you the high points, but I was in, when we got together, did I fall asleep in my popcorn while we were watching?
That's a bit of a drudgery, depressing stories.
And there is that too. Somebody must have been just like, man, I can't lower myself into the pit for this long. I have to be a little happier than what's going on.
All right, we're going to watch about people in the Depression in the Dust Bowl that have no money and no food. Let's go. It makes the Waltons look like a cheery, happy show.
That's right. Let's go to California where we can realize our dreams. Oh, yeah. It's terrible here too. Now what do we do? So that was, I can't recommend enough. If people really want to do that, it's the era for being able to capture every one of those top 100 movies and watch them kind of counting down, so you can see it's not in exact historical order. It's in influence order and the various other criteria that they use to judge how good they were. And there's also a version 2.0 where 23 films changed, but we got so much out of that in terms of an appreciation for American film and an understanding of these are the first people that did a tracking shot. These are the first people that had that, and the craft of certain actors. The reason that out of the top 100 films of all time, there's a lot of Jimmy Stewart and a lot of Humphrey Bogart and a lot of Cary Grant. It's because they really were superstar actors. They played different characters or sometimes similar ones, but while they're on the screen, you can't take your eyes off them. They just exude human emotion, and they're heroes or villains or whatever else it might be. Seeing Anthony Hopkins doing Silence of the Lambs, it's, man, that we talked about this. Brian Cox did a good job. Other people have taken it on, Mads Mikkelsen, but man, there's some people that were just made for a certain role. You know what I mean? And so that little thing of watching a 2-hour run through, I'm re-inspired to go watch some of those again. And that there's so many of them are available. There might be some now that they're going to be difficult to find at all, or
because Netflix is gone.
$2.99. That's right, Netflix is gone. Did I tell you about this? I discovered a place called Scarecrow out of,
I've heard of that,
Seattle or Portland. I think it's Seattle. That they're the ones that have taken on the Netflix role. They have a vast DVD and maybe even VHS, though I don't think so. I think it's DVDs collection, and you can order things through the mail and get like either 4 or 6 at a time. And it's a subscription thing like Netflix was, but for all the things that I really would like to watch 1 to N of, like when I watched the X-Files from start to finish, I got them all by just getting series of Netflix discs and stuff like that. So I'm thinking about that there are certain series that I really would like to see that I never saw all the way through, and Scarecrow is going to be my new source. So when I do my first order and they get it back, I'll be able to say, I'll fill us in on, hey, this place is really good.
Good.
Everything, and they arrived in good shape and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You know,
so it's funny you mentioned the AFI, because I was looking for some stuff to watch the last couple of days, and I said, yeah, I haven't seen all the James Bond yet. Let me go see what I still got on my list, or I don't remember seeing all of them. So
right.
I picked 2 last night that I watched. The first one was from 1954. I think it was the very first adaptation of a James Bond show. And it was, oh, you know it?
No, 54. I thought they weren't making movies of him yet. I thought the earliest was Dr. No in 62 or something like that.
Oh, no, okay. So the very first one was a TV adaptation for Climax Mystery Theater that was on, and it was Casino Royale.
Because that is the first novel, the later made movie.
And it was only an hour long. It's from 54. It's an hour long. It's a TV show. It's a very loose adaptation of the story. But they're in Casino Royale. They got Le Chiffre. But James Bond is American, and they call him Jimmy Bond, and Leiter is English. So
what an interesting swap there.
Yeah.
Honestly, I really love James Bond. I've seen every single one of them, but I've never seen this. So I can't say I've seen every single one of them. That was the first adaptation. Wow.
It was, Colin said, the roughest part is there's no music. That music adds so much to it. And it was
absolutely.
Yeah. The best part that I laughed at, I think this is still in the era when they did things like almost live on stage, like it was a play. You know, it wasn't quite, but I had that feel a little bit, because they did change scenes and stuff. But the one scene, he's there doing something with the door, and you saw the spotlight shift to focus on him. They had it wrong, and no edits and crap. So
right, it interrupts reality a little bit.
Yeah, that was funny.
Sun must have moved in the sky. Yeah.
So then the other thing I watched was Casino Royale, but with Peter Sellers.
See, that's the adaptation that they very first did of it, not the Daniel Craig later. The first one was Peter Sellers, David Niven, Woody Allen.
Yeah.
They made
George Orwell, Orson Welles. I'm sorry.
Orson Welles, exactly. And it had, like you said, some of the named characters, but it made fun of it. It was like just kind of like Matt Helm when Dean Martin played a secret agent, but they made fun of it. James Coburn and Flint, that kind of stuff.
It's definitely British, dry humor. And I didn't finish it all last night. I got an hour into it, and I'm like, oh dear God, they're not even at the casino yet. We have an hour left. I'm like, come on. So it's definitely it's not a very honorable, not honorable, but it doesn't try and make you feel like, hey, this is James Bond. It's, hey, this is Peter Sellers, and we're going to have fun.
That's right. It's funny to tie themes together, as we often do. We often have parallel things, and I'm not sure how that works out so often. I watched a bunch of James Bonds because they became available. The Daniel Craig, he was probably the sixth person to play James Bond, but they made really good movies with him having he's handsome, but in a cruel handsome way, not a beautiful handsome way Roger Moore might have been.
Very rugged, you
Very
might say.
rugged. And so I watched Casino Royale and then Quantum of Solace, which was never really a full book. It was only like a short story in one of the stories.
Yes.
And then let's see, the next Skyfall I watched, and then I wanted to watch Spectre, I think is the next one after that. And those were all free on the service that I was watching them on, probably Amazon, maybe Netflix. Number 4 was going to be for pay. And I'm like, you bastards, that you gave me the first 3 for free to just whet my appetite, and now you're going to make me pony up.
Oh,
Outwait you. I'll wait till you make Spectre.
but to see with we were talking about licensing with music and stuff, movies the same way. I love it when it's like, oh, such and such service just got the Lord of the Rings trilogy. No, not the trilogy. They got 1 and 3.
1 and 3. Except that it really wasn't. Oh, we just made a mistake. We left 4 out. They had a boardroom meeting and they said, what's the way in which we can build it? They're going to watch the series and then hold out one of them so that they have to pay for it. I just, that kind of stuff drives me crazy. I was watching Hannibal, rewatching Hannibal. I think I mentioned this, right? And between December 31st and January 1st, it went away. Now it's for pay instead of for free. And am I really I'll pay for Archer. I think Archer is the only thing that I've ever bought to make sure that it didn't go away. I really wanted to be able to watch them because that's what I do when I'm paying bills, folding clothes, whatever else it might be. I have Archer on all the time. The fact that's so easily manipulated that it isn't, hey, if I own it, I can always take it off the shelf. Hey, it used to be that if it was available via Netflix, over the course of time, Netflix streaming, things went away, but I just didn't notice how manipulated it was in this way. And now everybody is doing it. Doc Savage, the movie that I wanted to watch before I could watch it, it was on and then went away. Doctor Who, that we've talked about, that they have like different doctors, different seasons, and then they consolidated it all, so it was on like the BBC channel, but now they're leasing it out again, maybe to Prime or something like that. But I don't want to pay attention to this so much. I don't want to have a little chart of gotta watch it by end of February, it's going to be gone. And yet,
so I'm glad you mentioned Doctor Who, because I was going to tell you the classic 26 seasons of Doctor Who, I think all 26 are on there, is on Tubi. So you can go Tubi and watch it.
Is it like infested with commercials? Because me crazy about Hulu and maybe Tubi is I just need to sit down and watch it, not get another ad for Ozempic.
There are commercials, which they had commercials originally. So as long as they put the commercials in the natural break, I'm okay with that. Okay. But if they just throw it in randomly in the middle of some sentence, that bothers the crap out of me.
Well, we were waiting for the next season of The Rookie, and we noticed that there were times with The Rookie and maybe Castle or whatever that they literally like mid-sentence.
Yeah,
that's a way to do something else, and that's very. You didn't even take the time to watch it and get to a natural pause place
because
3-minute mark we fuck it over.
I think it's just. And this is a whole conversation, but I think it's just AI that they try and figure out a break somewhere. But if it goes this long, cut it anyway, or some bad rule like that. Yeah. So, that.
I just watched something where, because it was coming to the climax, we've noticed this before, when they used to do Sunday night at the movies, while we were watching the AFI history, we were noticing, wow, the first time I ever saw Lawrence of Arabia, all kinds of these films, it used to be like a big thing, Sunday night at the movies. That's where they had the first network presentation instead of it only being in the theaters. And we noticed that it's a 2-hour movie, and like from 9:30 to 10 o'clock, it was 2/3 commercials.
Yeah.
They know that you're not turning away from the end of Dr. Zhivago. They know you're not turning away from etc. Right. And they just would lard commercials in place. Oh, we hated that.
Yes.
End of Rocky. Stop cutting away from the climactic fight. Let
that cut
out.
Yeah.
Oh my God. How do you it was
I love the ones that get edited for time. And then you're like, wait, he didn't finish his sentence on that scene. There's another sentence. And they just cut end of scenes out or beginnings of scenes. So it's jarring to watch sometimes.
You've seen it before. Every time that we've seen The Grinch and you see the whole version before Dolly Madison had to put all of its cake ads in there. Wait, there are two more verses of the Grinch song. What's going on here? Oh,
Yeah.
I don't know. Now it is that many times you can find a good source for the original uncut version, but it's going back to that weirdness. Advertising runs the world, and they really can make demands on, hey, and while you're watching Bosch, make sure that you got a whole bunch of stuff just before they solve the crime. You know what I mean?
That's what Amazon's doing now. That they have commercials they're adding into their stuff unless you pay for the higher. But here's the thing, they've had Freevee for a while. It's like a separate channel, and they put and I told people, I said, so did you ever watch Freevee? Oh yeah, I watch Freevee movies, and that's on Amazon, owned by Amazon. Oh, I didn't know it was owned by Amazon. So you're watching these movies with commercials in it. And they're like, yeah. I'm like, that was a test. They were testing to see if people would watch the movies with commercials if it was free. Oh, they will. So now that's why they did it. And people are like, oh, really? Welcome to our world.
When I first started to see like the big difference between network was free, but you had to watch ads, and then you had cable, and you didn't. The first time that I saw like Comedy Central and they would interrupt movies or comedy specials with ads, it's like, I paid to watch this. I don't want you to get another layer of income off of me by injecting things into the middle of a comedy special. Because like just that, when you're in a theater watching Bill Burr, he doesn't stop and do a hair ad. You watch the entire set, and he has his own pacing that's actually pretty important to the quality of the thing. And seeing that get butchered, I stopped watching things on Comedy Central, almost everything. When it was like a half-hour comedy special, then I could bear one or two interruptions. I couldn't stand to try to watch Monty Python on the Holy Grail and have it be interrupted. I couldn't stand it.
When you have actors like Tom Cruise that demand $35 million to do a movie, you got to pay for it somehow, because my $14 a month streaming isn't paying for all of that. I do understand. I just hate it and don't agree.
Yeah. This is funny. I just did a whole talk about, hey, you only got so much time in your life. Try to listen to the 100 best songs, watch the 100 best movies, all that kind of stuff. And yet there's any number of times at like 11 o'clock at night, I sit down and just wander around and say, oh, this looks good, because guns and explosions and boobs and whatever else it might be, that's 11 o'clock at night guy viewing. Sorry.
Right.
Once in a while, they surprise you where the dialogue is so much wittier than it has to be for that kind of movie. There's, let's see, Army of the Dead, I think, where they're going to go into Vegas that has been infested by zombies to try to get into a big vault that it's whole fortune and stuff like that. And it's just so much better than I expected it to be. I thought it would be goofy, silly, and instead, like, the German safecracker guy was such a great character that then they made a prequel with showing how he came to be that guy.
Yeah.
And I like, it's fun to get into those things where it isn't. And it's funny, that isn't a great example, because there's people in it that are famous. I think The Rock is in it, and you can tell it's a vehicle for, no, is it The Rock? No, it's who plays the Destroyer in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, Dave
Bautista.
Bautista, exactly. I think he's that. Funny that there's some guys that are interchangeable because they're just so perfectly buff.
Pop their head off, put it on
exactly that. We need a guy that's going to be like filling a doorway when he comes into the room. Get that guy, or get the 2 or 3 other guys that could be that guy. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I just watched one the other day, and this is funny. Some of the ways in which you get it also is there's a whole bunch of desire for foreign investment in American-ish films. And so there's like a sniper series. And I watched like Sniper Grit, ground retaliation into something team, whatever else it might be. But I really expected it to be, okay, a ridiculous mission to free a hostage or whatever else it might be. And continually, the characters were amusing, and not just stereotypes. The interactions, the dialogue between them was so much better than it needed to be. I was like, I'm looking around like, how did someone actually made something of quality when they had $2 million to do it? That's not like a $30 million blockbuster or whatever. So I love those little discoveries. So everybody, Sniper Grit, it isn't great. It's not meant to be great. And yet, for the kind of movie that it is, it's
fun enough.
Really, it's better than the rest of them, that kind of thing.
Amazon Reacher season 2 is out, and that
I've been watching that.
That was great. I haven't seen the second season yet.
Exactly.
But have you watched Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon on Netflix yet?
No, haven't yet. It's like a 3.5 hour guy, right? It's a long movie. Is that so? I haven't cleared
It's
the time.
long, yeah. But
Okay.
he already said that the second one is supposed to be coming out this year, that they
Okay.
planned it as a long, and people are like, it's his Star Wars. And I'm hearing a lot of good, but it makes me nervous. I loved his longer version of Justice League. I thought it was really good. So I'm like, man, someone did a modern Star Wars. I gotta watch it. But I then heard, and this is a rumor, so it could totally be untrue, that Netflix has a director's cut version, but they wanted to release that later to try and keep people, so they'd watch this, then the director's cut, and then the second one, keep people on the service without canceling, blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, I don't know if I want to watch the non-director's cut if I know there's going to be a director's cut, but it's all rumor right now. So
I'd be willing to do it just out of, honestly, I'm surprised I haven't watched it yet, but Colleen and I did all kinds of wonderful stuff for the holidays with family, with ourselves. I had jury duty, whatever else it might be. So I really haven't had that 3 hours to sit down and watch it. And if we do it at the end of the day after dinner, that isn't necessarily a Colleen type movie. So I don't want to say, I'm going to watch this on the big TV because it requires it. Do you have a book you can go read? I never want to do that to her. You know what I mean? I don't want to. So we watch things that we'll both enjoy. Like we're waiting for The Rookie next season because we really have enjoyed that show. Nathan Fillion is very watchable. Another thing that's happened, people that got out of the Hollywood system, like C. Thomas Howell made a bunch of great movies where it wasn't going to be released to theaters. It was like direct to video, but do it for 5 million, make 30 million, repeat. So he's actually an accomplished guy, you know what I mean?
Right.
And I really liked his murder mysteries and like madcap comedies or whatever else kind of stuff. Dolph Lundgren did that as well. That he made a whole bunch of. He's an imposing guy, so have him be
and smart,
super SWAT team leader. And that's right. I should say that first. But he's not only an imposing guy. This is a guy that has like a PhD in chemistry and stuff like that. So
3 masters or something like that.
Yes, exactly. You know, and so like the kinds of things that he got involved in, I don't know if they've always been great. Kind of like Rutger Hauer. Rutger Hauer had some really good choices and then made some really stinky movies like Hobo with a Chainsaw that I had to watch just to see what in the world, what is going on here.
That's actually on Reese's list.
So there are some certain things that are like the auto accident that you can't not watch happening. I just have to see, why in the world did he do this? Did he have, I had to buy a house for my mom and Michael Caine talks about that. What did you think of your performance in Blame It on Rio? What I think about it is it bought my mom a house.
I got paid.
You know, exactly.
For the job.
I got paid. That's right.
I was going to mention something else. Remind me, I'll remember it for next week, I'm sure.
Okay. So yeah, it's in brief. We'll talk about this maybe next time. One of the joys of January is you really get to look at your year. And I'm not sure if you have cool literary events already. Are you going to be going to any of your cool literary workshops?
I've got some coming up, but Casey and I are focusing on trying to do some shows, the supernatural, paranormal, cryptid type shows to take our soaps because it's an untapped market for that type of thing. Okay. Plus, I'm writing some books that fit that. So some of these are expensive, like $200-$250 for a table. So we're splitting it. Yeah. So I'm taking my books for half and the soaps for half, help cover the thing. And we're combining it. And so I'm going to be doing some weekends traveling with that type of stuff.
Got it. It'll be a good experiment where it works and where it doesn't. Is it certain themes or is it places or whatever else it might be?
I think I mentioned I was working on Flutter a little bit, hybrid for mobile development, but I have a project idea that's been percolating for a couple years. And I've been talking to some people about it and getting some guidance. And that essentially what I'm pushing on this for is I'm meeting with an advisor from the Small Business Association to find out how to form a nonprofit company and then apply for a grant that would allow me to work on this project, because I'm probably going to need at least one more programmer and an artist and be able to offer this product I want to create to museums and historical societies of small towns all across the country.
What a wonderful legacy. You know what I mean? It's some part of, my head has not been in coding for the last couple of years, and yet I got to be pretty good at it, and I want to get current with skills in that regard. And that's what I keep thinking is, I don't want to do it where I'm doing it corporate. I want to do it where, like, hey, the little ladies that sell wreaths at Christmas for the Lakewood Historical Society, how if I write you a wonderful database and the online thing where people don't have to send in a postcard. They can actually do this online and you can keep track of all that. So I'm getting to that. I want to contribute more than I want to make money. I'm set. I'm okay and safe for the rest of my life. How do I make the world a little bit better place with my particular skills? You know what I mean? And I'm not an assassin. I'm a coder. You know what I mean? So we'll see what works out.
Bug assassin.
The grant is a great way to go. I don't know about, I've been thinking of, are there things that I want to do that would be Kickstarterable or indie fun, you know, Indiegogo, that, I don't know, people might want to say, hey, you've been doing pretentious drinking for 25 plus years. You should write a book. And I really might say, hey, if you give me like $10,000, I'll put other things away and dedicate myself to this. So I just need how many people to pledge $5 and they'll get a copy of it. You know,
look at Stephen King's On Writing, because I like the way that's done. It's a combination like autobiographical memoir and teaching training thing. You could have tales and how your life led to this pretentious drinking and the whole history of it, and then your favorite ones or what to look for when whatever.
That's very much what I'm thinking. It's not only going to be the catalog of we drank, but I want it to be that, like, out of all those that we've tried, 400 plus, here's the ones that have really stood out, or here's the ones that in some years it was like just the perfect timing to discover this, and all the little tales behind it. And what's the first year that we had so many people at the table is that people like came to the other side to help me serve because Gary and I were overwhelmed. That kind of thing. So there's stories behind it as well as just the information of it.
Right.
You know?
And I'm still trying to convince Reese to write a book about the horror, because his talk that he does is fantastic. And I love Reese. I've known him my whole freaking life.
Yeah.
Honestly, the talk was better than I thought it would be. And I'm not trying to say that derogatory. I was like, you just went way over and above what I even thought you were going to talk about. And we just are getting started with season 5 of that podcast and watched 40 some movies at this point. And we're going to have a couple more. He's watched way more than that. So it's just, I was like, dude, I think people would eat something like that up.
Yeah. In fact, that's another thing. Having said project that I want to be doing, I'm also like, with a little bit of extra money, there's all kinds of stuff out on Kickstarter and Indiegogo that I'm like, I want that to exist in the world. You've done it for games. I want to do it for comic books, whatever else it might be. There's all kinds of things that I'm just going to start browsing around and saying, that's worth $20. That's worth just hoping that thing works out. I know that there's people that don't get it done. I know that there's things that are lesser quality than you expect them to be. I want that thing of an artist being able to make their way in the world without having to sign the terrible contract that we talked about earlier, that in order to get this published, you sign away all your rights. You know what I mean? There really should be the fact that we have this ability to have a more direct relationship between a creator and a consumer. I want to be part of that. I want to be a Medici that's going to help sponsor those things to come into existence and be like, I'm proud of you. Every time that I order the next Ted Sikora masterpiece, I'm very pleased that I discovered him early, and I've been a little bit, a tiny little iota of helping with his success. I'm an early adopter and supporter, and any number of other things that I've contributed to over the course of time. So very cool.
Yeah, I was just talking to Tom Zoller about doing my next book cover. In fact, if you look, that's a different picture. I put book 2 up because it's going to be coming out soon.
I knew there was something different.
Yeah. And we're in talks about book 3 and the cover for that. Yeah.
Good for you and good for him. That's wonderful to hear.
Yeah. Great. All right, man.
All right. Okay. I think we're at time.
Yep.
As always, I'm not sure where we're at, but like when we get 200 episodes, we got to have some kind of celebration.
We're close. Yeah. We'll talk Tuesday, but then we're actually getting together because you sent me a gift through the mail, which I said, is Alan checking on my life insurance? Because I'm trying to read it. Oh my God, kill me.
For those who don't know, I got him a copy of Planetary Omnibus, and it's one of those huge album type things. But if you try to read in bed and rest on your chest, it's like denting your sternum.
Picture the 22 volume set of Encyclopedia Britannica in one book. Yeah, that's what it
exactly
is.
That. So,
it's like those old versions of the Bible that they keep on tables. So when I got you, I want to be there when you open it. So we're going to get together next week for lunch, and I can't wait for you. It's a little late, but hey, it happens.
It's just wonderful. Okay, so we'll see you Tuesday and then see you Friday, and just that we'll geekery onwards.
We will.
Very good. Man. Take care. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Well, we hope you enjoyed that episode of Relentless Geekery and that you'll come back every week and listen and join us in our conversation about all the exciting things in the world of geeks and the fun that we have, whether it be music or the movies or comics or role-playing games or board games and video games. We talk about so much, and we love having everybody come with us. Please, if you did enjoy the show and you like listening to us each week, give us a review, give us some thumbs up or stars, because that helps other people discover us and helps the podcast grow. And we also are starting to add some geeky, unique t-shirts. If you go to our website, relentlessgeekery.com, you'll see we have a shop with some t-shirts in it. And these are some fun sayings, some fun designs we've had and talked about on the show. You can also get a Relentless Geekery t-shirt. And this would also help support the show, as there are some costs with hosting and the software that we use. So it'd be great if everyone checked that out also. But please, we hope you come back next week and give us a review, pass it off to your friends, let them know. Join us as we talk more about the wonderful world of geekdom.
You have been listening to the Relentless Geekery podcast. Come back next week and join Alan and Steven's conversation on geek topics of the week.